Hi, I'm Malcolm Stern, and in conjunction with my friends John and Sandra Wilson from Online Events, we're creating a series of podcasts called Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. My book of the same name was conceived and inspired by the suicide of my daughter Melissa and the journey that took me on and the internal resources that I found. All of my guests will have a story to tell around overcoming and ultimately thriving through adversity. Special thanks to the band Stairway, Jim McCarty and Louis Chinamo, for the use of theme music from their album Medicine Dance, and my engineer Owen Santiago. I hope you enjoy this series, and thanks for listening. Welcome to my podcast, Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. And we've had lots of great guests on this podcast. It's about how we thrive through adversity and how it helps shape who we are and shape how we live our lives. I'm very happy today to have a wonderful guest, Andrew Cuerden. And Andrew, I've danced with Andrew, and he is extremely special man. He brings something extraordinary to that process, and it's like when something's in your blood and you have no choice but to follow it. Then you follow it, and then you become a master at it, and that's what I've watched Andrew become. And it's not easy, kept growing up presumably in a South African household, um, where you're being sort of not very. It's not very macho to be a dancer, is it really? That's sort of environment. So let's start there with you, Andrew, and let's
All
see
right.
how it was in your childhood.
Well, firstly, thank you, Malcolm, for inviting me onto your podcast. It's a real honor and privilege, and great to see you again. I guess, yes, growing up in South Africa as a boy had its challenges. That said, I think I was very blessed with the parents that I had in the sense that they, they were of a certain, I guess, uh, um, what's the word? Culture and but also time, sort of almost sometimes Victorian kind of upbringing. So there was a very strong discipline. My dad was in the military, and my mom was a jack of all trades, but they were very loving, and I guess they wanted me happy. So I think when I turned around and said, "Mom, can you take me to ballroom dancing lessons?" I think she probably nearly fell over because my brother was sort of first team rugby, and again, it wasn't sort of the usual thing that a boy does. But they were happy for me to follow my dreams, and that's always been the case. So I've been very blessed. I think my dad took a little. Well, he actually did a bit of dancing when he was in England. He was born in Eastbourne and grew up in the West Country, and I think dancing back in the sort of early 1940s was common ground. That's where people met their other halves. So it wasn't that foreign to him. But I think he later on, when I got a bit more serious about the dance, he probably did fear that maybe that wasn't the path my career should take. I could do it as a bit of fun, but not something I should take seriously. So yeah, it was more tough at school. School
Yeah.
and the general public is where I took most of the flack. Yeah.
Mm. And of course, you were on Strictly Come Dancing, which is a sort of like, definitely a sort of a gold standard sort of mark for you that actually you were recognized as someone who really was a very skilled dancer. But that's where that journey will have taken you to from there to there will have taken you a whole lot, I reckon, as well. So what's happened in your life that sort of has challenged you as a dancer or has evoked you or evolved you as a dancer?
Well, I guess, there's two things that we have in life. There's either something that draws you forward and something that pushes you, or you're running away from, or you're running to. And I guess when I decided, when I was leaving school that I wanted to pursue my dancing career, and I gave my parents were like they weren't too happy about that, and but I tried the tertiary education. But growing up in the time I was in South Africa, we were just coming out of apartheid. The country was in incredible turmoil, and so the tertiary education just became a no starter. Anyway, I did 1 or 2 years of that, and then my passion and my dream is always to be a professional dancer. So I eventually persuaded my parents to enable me to use my British passport and come to England. And so I left South Africa at the age of 20 with £500 on a week travel card, not really knowing what was going to happen to me. But I guess I had enough well, certainly enough ignorance or naivety of youth, and I guess a certain level of courage. But I guess I had a deep faith in how life. I don't know. I guess I was watching my parents growing up, and they both had stoicism and sort of real resilience from their sort of own sort of cultural backgrounds, but also my mum particularly had a very strong sort of spiritual faith, and I was brought up in that. So, I always felt like, as my mum would say, legions of angels would be going with me, and I always felt that no matter what happened, I would be okay. So that was kind of my I guess faith, and so I came over and. Yeah, it was really, really tough. With no real support system. My parents, didn't have much money, so I was kind of like, okay, this is it. You make or break. You've got to make this work. And I guess, when you're young and you're in your 20s, you kind of just do go with the flow. You don't sort of have the heaviness sometimes of maturity to kind of worry about all the things that could go wrong. Um,
And you
and
don't have all the responsibilities as well, do you? So that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and oh my God, going from a small town and coming to the big bad city of London, I remember arriving after it took me, I think, 36 hours or 48 hours door to door to get from my home in South Africa to a hostel in Victoria, London. And I remember sitting on the bed at about 9 o'clock in the morning in a bunk room, with six other people, and listening to the roar of London and going, "What the hell have you done? You idiot." I'll be here 3 weeks and I'm going to go home. Anyway, you know, um, I just followed my nose, followed my passion, and fairly soon I plugged into a dance world. And within, I don't know, a couple of months, had a dance partner, and off I went. And the dancing community, in a way, became my family, which has its ups and downs and ins and outs, but we might get there later. But and then it was just it's always been, I guess, follow your passion, but lead with love. That's kind of been my motto throughout life. And then, I competed for about 15, 20 years through as an amateur, uh, sort of representing England, and then into my professional life where we represented Finland. We were top two in Finland because my partner was Finnish at that time. And we danced together for 9 years. And part of that was, yeah, being accepted as dancers on the third series of Strictly Come Dancing. So everyone was still learning about what that was all about. We were a little apprehensive of how the BBC had portrayed ballroom dancing in the past. It had kind of been very sort of old-fashioned and sort of what your granny does on a Sunday afternoon in a pleated skirt. But so we were a bit wary of this new program, and we really didn't know how it was going to turn out. But again, we took a chance, and it was a life-changing experience. But it certainly wasn't the sort of one sense the pinnacle of my career. The pinnacle of my career was, I guess, being ranked top 24 in the world as a professional Latin American dancer, dancing at the Royal Albert Hall, because there you're validated by your peers. It's being on telly is one thing, but it's not always, doesn't always feel like it's your best dancing.
And what hurdles did you encounter during this time? Because these things never go smoothly, do they? We find our path, and then we get little things come in our path that can trip us up.
Yeah.
What particularly happened to you along the way?
I think I've always been quite a sensitive person, and London in itself is quite a tough city. Any big city is tough. Then you add on the competitive dance world, which is very ego based. It's very competitive by nature, and so it's hard to make friends, and to be seen. And then you know it's it's also financially very tough. It's an expensive sport, and so you're juggling work and dance life, and you're constantly questioning, is this the right path for me? You know, should I just get a proper job? Um, um, yeah,
And I think the time I realized you were in one of my groups, which was lovely having you in there as well.
yeah,
Um, and you danced, and it was like I was reminded of watching Rudolf Nureyev dancing. I'm not saying you are exactly the same, but it was almost like I could see that every part of your body was thoroughly engaged. It's like here we are, sort of trying to sort of do a little move here and there, as as people who are you know, warming up in a group. And here's you who's able to sort of to fly, in fact.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we can't deny our calling, and that's the thing. But there are, as you say, hurdles, and there are things like financial. So it's like, you can be a musician, you can be a really good musician, but never really make enough to get by because you haven't quite hit the big time.
Yeah.
And did you quite hit the big time, or what happened for you?
I guess for a short time, when we did Strictly, all of a sudden, going from a very poor sort of artist dancer, finally for once in my life, I had, money in the bank. We could go on holidays, we could buy clothes, and kind of live a more normal life, get a decent place to live. And, yeah, it was great. But you know, it's an interesting this adversity we talk about in the dance world, like the fire in the belly. The hungry person is the most creative, and
Yeah.
it's interesting when suddenly and watching other dancers in that environment and how very quickly when you have all the comforts of modern living, your creativity and your sense of drive. Um, I guess is it then the drive to make money or is it the drive to be creative? And I guess that creative spirit, that's the challenge, I guess.
I think it's probably more than that as well, because I'm just as you're speaking, I'm thinking about when I was really hungry as a therapist, sort of having to really get out there, be creative to sort of to find ways of operating. And it's almost like it's quite easy to find a plateau
Yeah.
where you're functioning perfectly well, but you're not firing on all cylinders. And so I think that the challenge is really how do we carry on firing on all cylinders? It's not just about the money, because I know that's one thing, of course, but it's about keeping that creativity fresh and alive.
Well, it is that sense of aliveness, and I guess the place where I feel most alive is on the dance floor. And also, it's the relationship with other. I guess I fell in love with ballroom dancing or partner dancing because I guess for some reason, ever since I was a small child, I've been a romantic at heart. I love the energy between people, and how do we exchange energy in whatever way, whether it's through talking or dancing or whatever. And that's been the fascination for me, and I think that's why I've sort of move now more towards the coaching and the therapeutic aspect because I'm really fascinated about how do we connect with another. And that's what I guess was always the driving force. I mean, no matter how poor or rich or what was happening on my life, that connection to other, the unity, the harmony that can create, and we flying together around the dance floor in harmony it was my soul food.
And I suppose it must have been tricky sometimes because there's a danger of actually sort of like of thinking that this is your soul partner as you sort of find this perfect rhythm together and you fall in love and then you realize that perhaps you don't have a lot in common, but you know how to move together.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting thing, Malcolm. And this is sometimes where, I don't know if you've heard of the strictly curse, this issue that's been
No, I
going
don't know
on,
that. Tell us.
where the celebrities have been falling for the professionals. And my
Okay.
my belief around this is if you are coming into a dancing environment and you have cracks in your own personal relationship, the dancing will bust it open wide. It will show everything up because dancing is by nature very emotional. It's very passionate. It's very close. But what sometimes non-dancers forget or don't appreciate is that the professionals, we almost don't, without sounding kind of cold, we don't actually sometimes see you as a person. We see you as a body. We're worried about the choreography, the timing, where we're on the dance floor. Where the last kind of thing sometimes is like, okay, what is our personal relationship? We're there as business people, as professionals to create a
Yes.
story. We're actors. And non-dancers sometimes get caught up in the act and they think it's real. And then there's kind of dynamics. And then obviously, if the professionals are out of their integrity, and they have issues in their personal lives, then yes, there is the potential for.
I guess it is easy to fall for glamour, and I think there's something of glamour in dancing, isn't there? Um, I remember sort of when I was a long, long time ago when I was at a five rhythms dance class, and I had this perfect rhythm. I don't have perfect rhythm, I promise you, as you would have seen, but I had this perfect rhythm with this woman, and we danced like it was almost like every move was. It felt like magic and perfect. And so I said to her, let's meet up and go and have dinner sometime. So we went and had dinner. We had nothing to say to each other. So we had perfect harmony on the floor, but actually in terms of our psyches, they didn't match at all. But it's very easy to override that, isn't it? When
Well, it's
you're
part of the work I sometimes do with my couples, with my relationship coaching, is that when there are issues on the intellectual level, on the sort of the cognitive mind, we remove the speech, we even remove the sight. We get them to close their eyes and connect physically and find that harmony through their bodies. And if we can somehow find that common ground and moving together slowly, there is a possibility that we can also find a way through the intellectual. But first, we need to connect on the level of awareness and presence. And it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't always mean it translates through, but
no.
it is fascinating.
Yeah. So so right now you've moved from being a dancer, which you still are, obviously, but also that you've gone into other realms of actually trying to take that work into new arenas. And I
Yeah.
wonder how that's panning out for you.
Well, I guess it's a journey. Every day is a school day. The sense that, uh, really feeling into who is it that I really want to help? Who do I resonate? Who's going to resonate with the work I do? And I guess my unique mix of, I guess, being a man, moving in the coaching therapy world as a dancer is quite sort of relatively unique. Um, and I guess so. It's just constantly doing the work for myself. How am I relating to other? How am I showing it in my presence? A few years ago, it came to me that you're not paying me for what I know. You're paying me for my presence and my patience and my passion.
Right.
How can I
Yes.
hold space for people, no matter who they are or what they're going through? And then I allow the dance and the music to do most of the work. And then, like yourself, Malcolm, you sit and you bear witness, and you
Yeah.
invite people to come up with their own insights, their own questions, their own answers. So I guess I'm learning to hold space as skillfully as possible, and let the music and dancing do the work.
It's fantastic. And holding space is a real art as well. So I've watched that when I'm teaching regularly at Skiros, which you've also been to,
Yeah.
um, which is a holistic holiday center. And you can see the people who know how to hold the space, whether they be dancers or yoga teachers or artists or swimming instructors. Some people really know how to hold space, and I think it's an art we don't really understand. But it's a place where things can change.
Well,
We're no longer putting out a bullshit.
it's been interesting how I've, spent the first half of my life filling space, being on stage, look at me, kind of thing, and standing in front of the mirror and making sure that I, look how I think I should look. And now I've almost flipped the mirror around, or I'm using the mirror in a much different way. And now it's all about, yeah, holding space. And there's always a dance. I talk about in every moment in life, we are either leading and or following, you know, and have the awareness of when you are, what is required in the moment. Are you required here to hold space, to lead and to um, facilitate, or are you meant to sort of follow and fill space? It's such a it's not a binary thing. It's a sort of a free flowing space. But
Yes.
so yeah, it's really interesting to observe that in me. And I think ultimately we all want to be seen and heard,
Yeah.
ultimately, and loved and appreciated. And if we can create spaces where people feel that way, then that's half the job in a way.
Yeah. I guess that's true, and it's also I mean, you've got a long-term partner who's not a dance partner. Well,
Um,
she may well be a dance partner as well, but that's not her primary function. And you've got this organization, Soul Hub, that you've created together.
yeah.
And I'm wondering how it's like when you're in dancing with someone, and there's a magical rhythm. There's that powerful connection. I wonder how that impacts in terms of jealousy and difficulty in relationship, if it does.
Absolutely. Um, and this has been, and I hope I'm just feeling into whether what I share here. I guess when I met Carmen, she's not a dancer. And she would watch me either in a competition or working with women. And, the work I do is quite intimate, quite physically, close. It was a struggle for her, and it is a struggle for non-dancers because they don't kind of appreciate what I was talking about before about we're working on the mechanical aspects of the dance. We're not in the emotional aspect of it. We're
Yeah,
holding space for the people that we're dancing with. Um, I think, and the more and so the dance that Carmen and I have been dancing is, and maybe it's a typical masculine feminine thing, not male female, but masculine feminine. The masculine wants freedom, and the feminine wants connection. And so we've been having this sort of to and fro dance. And the lesson I guess, learned with my partner is that the more I've committed to her, the more I've invested time in dancing with her and again making her feel seen and loved and appreciated. And then she's able to allow me the freedom to do more of dancing and dancing with other women and doing what I love to do. And that's the dance. But I think the one of the teachings that I teach through my partner dancing is that there has to be a commitment to the relationship, to the center. If you
yeah,
commit to the center, to the core of the relationship, you can then, and this is even in a physical thing, if you're holding someone, you can then stretch out, you can lean out, you can support each other. But you have to have a commitment to those connecting hands. If you if that connecting hand is chaotic, insecure, or inconsistent, then the person on the other side of that hand is going to feel unsafe. So if you
mm,
can really hold that center and say, I've got you, I'm not going to go anywhere, but I'm going to stretch out over here and have some, like I want to reach out and see what I can touch on the other side. They'll let you. But if there's any wobble or any inconsistency of connection, then that's the thing. So it's what we call sort of eccentric stretching in a muscular way, but it's also in a relationship way of stretching in two directions. You're stretching towards the person that you are committed to, but you can also then grow and stretch in other areas of your life. So that's the lesson we're learning.
it's lovely. I remember, when I was first practicing as a psychotherapist, and I was starting to sort of weave some magic, as you clearly weave some magic. I suddenly became overnight much more attractive to women, and I thought, oh, well, I must be amazing. But actually, it was a bit of a journey to sort of travel on to realize that actually that what they were drawn to was the projection of what I did rather than who I was.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for me to go home to my wife and children and not be adored. I wonder if you
Yeah.
have that like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also been a journey for me recently. Most of my life, like you said very kindly, I've become a master, and yes, on one hand, but that's also an egoic trip. I remember saying to Carmen about a year ago, as we're now building a business and I'm moving to different things, excuse me, and becoming a bit of a jack of all trades. Having to run your own business, you've got to do lots of different things, um, and that's been a challenge of, diversifying and I remember getting like, well, I don't want to be a jack, I want to be a master at something, because I want to be applauded, I want to be appreciated, and not just be like, well, and it's been a real journey to be okay just being normal, just being me. How can I walk down the street and be of value? How can I walk down the street and just be my fullest self? And that's all I need to do. My worth is not my work. And to remove this egoic need to stand out, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, when I talk about the mastery, I'm very guided by Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers, in which he says if you do something for, you'll know this, if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become a master at it. And you've probably done your 10,000 hours and plus, plus, plus. And there's something about if you've kept going, there's something in you would have been molded in that place as well.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you see it going in the future. Where do you see your dance work going in the future?
Oh, Malcolm. I guess I would just love to do more and more work with people through what I call metaphysical dance. It's my sort of modality. It's the therapeutic dance through partner dancing. I guess there is a lot of therapeutic dance, but it's primarily sort of, your five rhythms, your ecstatic dance, your more free flowing stuff. And I guess the work that I bring to the dance therapy, excuse me, world is one where it's based on mechanics, the principles of dance. You know, what is balance? You know, what is alignment? What is structure and flow? Lead and follow. All these kind of principles that a professional dancer employs are exactly the same principles that we employ in life. So, yeah, I wanted to continue developing this, running workshops. Obviously, Carmen and I are looking at doing something around the art of relating with couple work using dance and psychotherapy. But also love to do more public speaking on it. And you know, more retreats. Couples can come away, or individuals can come away and explore how dance can really animate and be be a lens to see themselves in a different angle and different light.
Mm.
And then, you know, that's my personal work. And then obviously Carmen and I run Soul Hub, and Soul Hub is an evolving community. And we're learning how to hold and create community. And that's a whole another challenge in today's world of digital platforms and social media, and what are the new rules of engagement and of dancing with the public, as it were. But I guess ultimately we see ourselves as bridges of worlds, of connecting the dots, of bringing people together and gathering, whether it's to our dancing that we do, outdoor dancing in the community, whether it's through our soul walking, you know, walking in nature, or whether it's just one-to-one, you know, coaching. You know, we want to bring people together in harmony, and I think we are very passionate about integration and the unity through diversity. You know, how can we learn from each other rather than it's them against us? It's them with us. How can we together create a better world? And that's what we really feel quite passionate about now. Um, so how do we break down the divisions? How do we bring people together? And dance for me is one of the most beautiful ways of doing that, the universal language of music and dance. So that's, I think, somewhere in that direction, and we are doing it, but I want to do more of that.
Yes. And do you still get a joy from sort of like I've watched you sort of like get into the rhythm and suddenly you're taking off like a wild sort of sprite. And I
Um,
wonder if you still get a joy from it because I think that's the place where we've got to watch. If that joy disappears, then something needs to be upgraded and uplifted.
Yeah, Malcolm, to be honest, it is like anyone's practice. It's one that I need to invest more in, and why I've made a sort of decision to stop my weekly social group classes, so that I can spend more time investing in my own dancing, exploring other types of dance, and because it is the the joy in my blood, you know, in my veins, as you said before. And you know, when life gets tough, and you know, we're been away for the summer, and you know, we're both self-employed, so it's, you know, the cash flow can be tricky, but you can't get sucked into the fear of that and the belief in limitation and lack. You've got to go out and do the things that bring you joy. And again, it's like that eccentric stretching. You got to commit to your work, but also you got to stretch out and find the joy. And
Yeah.
it one feeds the other. So yes, definitely, I'm keen to get out and do more dancing for myself, because I think that's something I have neglected over the last few years, whilst building the business. And I guess diving deeper into the psychotherapeutic aspect of it, and holding space for other people. I need to hold space for myself now a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that as we get older, I mean, what I've discovered as I'm now in my dotage, not quite, but on the way, is that I no longer want to do. I don't want to do work that doesn't come from my soul.
Yeah,
I will have to sort of balance it. That there is some work you do because it's well paid.
yeah,
There's other work you do because it speaks to you, and then there's work you do that actually lights your fire.
yeah,
And so I do these podcasts, and they are it's fascinating engaging with people,
yeah,
getting underneath what goes on for people.
yeah,
And for me, it's not about always about earning money, but you're at a different stage in your life where you've got to keep it held together
yeah.
and without actually surrendering your passion.
Yeah, it's a I write about this a lot. You know, that's the sort of the knife edge, the polarity, the paradoxical polarity that in every moment we're kind of having to balance on. And you know, I look around and I see a world that is almost on a kind of like on a knife edge, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yes.
it's like how do we, and I guess one of my core beliefs is that life happens for us, not to us, and I think because that puts me in a place of empowerment. And so if I'm looking at my current situation and the global situation is like, okay, how am I becoming in this? It's not what do I do, but who am I becoming in the process? Is it softening me? Is it making me wiser, more empathic? Is it making me, a better person? Or is it making me scared, bitter and twisted, resentful, cynical, and so that's the constant check-in. How am I responding? How am I being of service to myself and to others? So yeah, it's in everything, it's a holographic universe. How we do one thing is generally how we do most things.
Yeah.
So it's a constant self-reflection and cleaning. What's it? Cleaning the window, is it? Is that
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
let the
Yes.
light through? So
Yes. So we're coming towards the end of our chat and our podcast, but there's always a question I ask people who do these with me, which is, what's the particular dragon you've had to slay or hurdle you've had to overcome in order to be who you are? What's the thing you wrestled with or are still wrestling with?
I think it's self-worth. I as a child, I grew up. I was the baby of the family by a long shot. And as I mentioned earlier, my parents were loving, but it was very disciplined, very authoritarian, and a lot of discipline, and so you really didn't have much of a voice, or an opinion, and you just did what you were told, and also in the schooling, it was very strict, and I think to kind of feel that I have the freedom to be who I want to be, despite the fact that I've lived this life. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I ran away and I escaped. Dancing gave me that permission to be more of who I
Yes.
wanted to be. And so I think it's still um, that edge for me to be my fullest unashamed self, you know,
Mm.
and
Yes.
not worry about, even in the dance world, you constantly worry about what people think of you because it's, dancing, unfortunately, not a sport. It's a subjective arena where the people like you or not, whether you get the ball in the hole.
Yes.
So you constantly sort of looking over your shoulder going, oh, am I doing the right thing at the right time? So breaking that mold, and yeah, I guess being my true self. And I feel that's for everyone. We're all
Yes.
put into molds, and it's to break the mold and to be who we're meant to be.
Well, and I think you're fortunate that it's from an early age, life showed you what your particular potential was, and that you've enhanced that, and you're working with that, and you're having to work with other things as well, so to round yourself. So, thank you very much for coming with us today. It's been really, really good talking to you as ever, and yeah, look forward to further conversations.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for being an amazing host.
Thank you, Andrew. Much appreciated.